The world just witnessed a move so bold, so unexpected, that even the most seasoned analysts were left stunned. Imagine this: the world's largest democracy, India, and the world's fastest-growing superpower, China, both turning their backs on the United States at the same time. And the target isn't just politics, it's Apple, the crown jewel of American technology. For decades, Washington believed it had India locked in as a partner, a counterweight to China's rise. Apple believed the same. Billions of dollars, massive factories, and tens of thousands of jobs were poured into India. The plan was simple: escape the risks of China, build a fortress in India, and secure America's influence in Asia. But in a shocking twist, that fortress may now collapse. Not because of Beijing, but because of New Delhi itself. India is openly threatening to cut off Apple, freeze production, and send a message the United States never expected to hear. We don't need you anymore. And if that wasn't enough, whispers of secret India-China meetings hint at something far bigger. A new alliance, new trade rules, and possibly the beginning of America's biggest strategic defeat in decades. But how did it come to this? Let's break it down. Apple's story is as much about ambition as it is about survival. For years, the company relied almost entirely on China's Foxconn factories. Every iPhone, every AirPod, every iPad that dominated global markets was stamped with "Made in China." But the tides of geopolitics turned fast. U.S.-China tensions exploded into tariffs, sanctions, and bans. Beijing tightened its tech laws. Rising nationalism made the environment unstable. Suddenly, what had once been Apple's biggest advantage looked like a ticking time bomb. So Apple made a bold pivot to India, and on paper it was perfect. A market of 1.4 billion people, hundreds of millions rising into the middle class, and an eager government offering massive tax breaks and subsidies. Washington celebrated too. Apple's move wasn't just about business, it was about strategy, tying America's tech dominance to a rising ally that could counterbalance Beijing. The investments were staggering. New factories in Tamil Nadu and Karnataka, run by Foxconn, Pegatron, and Wistron. Billions spent on infrastructure. Tens of thousands of Indian workers trained. Apple wasn't just diversifying risk, it was creating the future hub of iPhone production. By 2027, nearly 1/4 of all iPhones were projected to be built in India. The U.S. had its perfect partner, or so it thought. But that illusion was about to shatter. The trouble began in Washington. Donald Trump believed he had the perfect weapon: tariffs. His administration slapped heavy duties on Indian exports, everything from textiles to pharmaceuticals. The message was simple: play by America's rules or pay the price. In the White House, it was sold as protecting American jobs, but in New Delhi, it was seen as something else entirely: humiliation. For years, India had been treated as the junior partner in this relationship, expected to follow America's lead. Trump's tariffs felt like the final insult, and India did not take it lightly. Instead of bowing down, Indian officials began drawing up their own list of countermeasures. At the very top sat one name: Apple. Freezing Apple's new projects, halting production lines already under construction, threatening to choke off the very lifeline Apple had built to escape China. It was a message that sent shockwaves through Washington. India was no longer afraid to push back, no longer afraid to say no. For Apple, the timing couldn't have been worse. Billions invested, factories humming at full capacity, and suddenly, the oxygen supply could be cut overnight. But what made this worse was who India seemed ready to partner with next. For decades, India and China were rivals. Border clashes, military standoffs, economic competition. The two giants rarely trusted each other. And Washington counted on that. American presidents believed they could always play New Delhi against Beijing. But now, something very different is happening. Reports from the South China Morning Post revealed that Indian and Chinese delegations quietly met in Dubai and Jakarta. These weren't just casual talks. They discussed joint energy projects, plans to trade in national currencies instead of dollars, even coordination ahead of the upcoming BRICS summit. If confirmed, this would be nothing short of a nightmare for U.S. diplomacy. The two countries Washington always thought would remain enemies might be finding common ground, and the timing perfectly aligned with Trump's tariffs. By trying to punish India, Washington may have pushed it straight into China's arms. Western media didn't hold back. The Guardian called it a geopolitical earthquake. Foreign Affairs wrote bluntly, Washington underestimated the rise of India. The country is no longer a junior partner. It is becoming an independent power center. For America, this wasn't just about Apple anymore. It was about losing the one player it had counted on to contain China. And that made Apple's crisis even more dangerous. The numbers tell the story. Apple had staked its future on India. By 2027, 1 in every 4 iPhones worldwide was supposed to roll off an Indian assembly line. Already, iPhone 12, 13, and 14 models were being produced there. The supply chain had been restructured. Contracts worth billions signed. Tens of thousands of workers were employed across Tamil Nadu and Karnataka. Entire local economies were reshaped around Apple's arrival, and now all of it stood at risk of being frozen. The danger wasn't just to Apple's bottom line. If New Delhi followed through, Wall Street would feel it instantly. Apple isn't just another company, it's one of the pillars of America's stock market. A stumble in Cupertino can send shockwaves across the entire U.S. economy. To global investors, it would look like this: the world's largest democracy, supposedly America's ally, openly turning against a symbol of U.S. power. It would be more than a business story, it would be a political earthquake. And Washington knew it. Inside the White House, alarm bells rang. Reuters reported that officials were scrambling to prepare retaliatory measures. Options on the table included restricting Indian IT companies from accessing U.S. markets and revising visa rules for Indian engineers. But here's the problem. Those engineers are the backbone of Silicon Valley. They drive innovation at Google, Microsoft, Amazon, and countless startups. Pulling the plug on them would hurt America as much as it would hurt India. Washington found itself trapped. Punish India, and you punish yourself. Do nothing, and you look weak. Meanwhile, India's statements were growing louder, more confident. Officials declared that New Delhi now had its own levers of pressure, that India could stand on its own. For the first time in decades, the United States wasn't the one dictating terms. It was being challenged. Openly, directly, and by a country it once believed was firmly in its camp. And this wasn't just about trade. It was about the very foundations of global power. India's actions signaled something bigger than tariffs. For the first time, it was wielding its economic power not just for growth, but as a weapon of foreign policy. At the upcoming BRICS Plus summit, sources suggest India and China may unveil a new settlement system. Energy transactions in rupees and yuan, cutting the dollar out of the equation. For Washington, this would be devastating. The dollar has long been America's most powerful tool. It isn't just currency, it's leverage. But if India joins China in building alternatives, the dollar's dominance could begin to erode. And it's not just theory. European analysts warned that Trump's strategy could dismantle decades of U.S. foreign policy overnight. Instead of containing China, the U.S. risks pushing India into a partnership with it. That would leave Washington isolated in Asia, relying only on Japan and South Korea, while its supposed ally transforms into a challenger. The consequences? Massive. From Apple's supply chains collapsing to U.S. influence shrinking in the world's most important region. But perhaps the most damning part is what this says about America's long-term strategy. History has a cruel way of repeating itself. Decades ago, Washington believed that opening trade with China would create a compliant partner. Instead, it created its greatest rival. Now, the same mistake may be unfolding with India. For years, U.S. leaders assumed that New Delhi would always align with Washington against Beijing, that economic ties, technology, and shared democratic values would keep it close. But Trump's tariffs ripped that illusion apart. Instead of cementing a partnership, they pushed India to assert independence. Instead of containing China, they may have created the conditions for India to cooperate with it. For Apple, it's a nightmare. For Washington, it's worse. A strategic defeat decades in the making. Because losing India doesn't just mean losing a market. It means losing influence in the region where the future of the 21st century will be decided. And it means that Trump's attempt to protect American jobs could go down as the moment the United States lost its ability to dictate the global game. At its core, this story isn't just about tariffs, iPhones, or Apple's factories. It's about power. For the first time, India is showing that it can say no to America and do it proudly. This shift isn't just policy. It's becoming a matter of national pride. We are strong. We are independent. We don't have to obey. That message now resonates across India's leadership and its people. And that's why analysts are asking, is the U.S. repeating history all over again? First, it miscalculated with China. Now it risks miscalculating with India. Apple's crisis may just be the headline, but the deeper story is about a changing world order, where America is no longer the unquestioned leader and where nations once seen as allies are beginning to chart their own path. This may well become the defining legacy of the Trump era. Not just a trade war gone wrong, but the unraveling of decades of U.S. strategy and the rise of new powers willing to defy Washington itself. And if that's true, then Apple's collapse isn't just about technology. It's the symbol of something far greater: the end of America's ability to control the rules of the game.